So in case you've been living under a rock, the two best decks by far in the game right now is Tachyon and Shiranui. Tachyon is probably the better one out of the two, but Shiranui is also just really, really good. And also it has a lot of counters against specifically Tachyons as well. That's why it's also seeing a lot of play. But of course, it's also pretty good on its own. Let's have a look at what the common threats are before we talk about how we can counter the deck. First are the main deck stuff. We have Spirit Master, which pops a face-up card and can be banished pretty easily with Gold Sock. We have people usually play a single copy of Samurai, which can beat over anything because it banishes anything that it battles, which gets around target protection. So not even something like a Leo Dancer can prevent Shiranui from popping off. We have a switchable trap, which is really annoying. This is basically Hallowed Life Barrier, and it's not a single use. You can use this effect as many times as you want, as long as this card is on the field, which is insane. This card is absolutely broken. It's not so much good in terms of power level, it's just annoying. And in combination with the other follow-up stuff that Shiranui has access to, this is just insane. This definitely should be on the balance, in my opinion. And of course, Mischief of the Gnomes is pretty accessible in Shiranui as well, because they can make a Beatrice and send this card to the graveyard pretty easily. So if you're playing a deck that is countered by gnomes, you should be really scared of Shiranui's going first, because they can make this card pretty much guaranteed as long as they have one of their many one-card starters that could get them to a Beatrice. For the extra deck, we have Squire Saga, which pops both monsters and back row without targeting. We have Sun Saga, which pops multiple cards without targeting, and also has a really annoying destruction protection for all of your monsters. Shogun Saga is just a really, really big guy, so if you have a low attack monster, you better watch out for this guy. Skill Saga is what allows the deck to summon Sun Saga during the opponent's turn to turn it into a disruption. And also, Yukiona is a card that people usually play, and it has an effect that negates one face-up card on the field. And also, it has a quick effect that could banish itself to summon back one of your Shiranui Synchros. Most oftentimes, it's going to be Sun Saga, which again allows you to pop stuff without targeting. So here are some counters that I have thought up about how to counter Shiranuis, and because Shiranui is such a graveyard-reliant deck, a lot of anti-graveyard cards will be useful against Shiranuis, including Lancia, which prevents them from banishing stuff from their graveyard or using Gold Sock. DD Crow, which allows you to banish their Spectral Sword before they get to use its effect. Skullmeister can negate the effect of the Spectral Sword, but it does stay in the graveyard, so they can just use it again during the next turn, which is annoying. And also cards like Silent Graveyard is pretty good to counter their graveyard effects as well. I didn't put Necro Valley in this list because they can play through Necro Valley pretty easily. They can use Gold Sock to pop the Necro Valley by banishing the Spirit Master, or they can just normal summon Squire, grab the level 3 Tuner, make the level 7 Synchro, and then just pop it that way. So there are plenty of outs within the archetype itself that can get rid of Necro Valley, but otherwise Necro Valley would also be a pretty good pick as well. Some popular choices that are expensive staples include Forbidden Droplet, which counters their Link Free when they make it during their first turn. You can negate the Link Free, or you can negate Sun Saga, which you can choose depending on what cards you have or what cards they have. And be sure that you activate this knowing if your opponent has the continuous trap, because if they have the continuous trap, they can always chain that trap in response to this effect activation and still get the effect to resolve. So either you bait them to use the effect first and then you use the negate afterwards, or you pitch a trap as one of the cost for Forbidden Droplet, which prevents them from using the effect in response. Another one is IDP and Overroot. Both of these cards are pretty good limit free traps that also deal with the graveyard specifically. IDP gets rid of both the Spectral Sword and one monster on their field, and Overroot also pretty much does the same, and also Overroot clogs up one of the zones by having the Spectral Sword face down on this side of the field, which they can't really do a whole lot to do with it. Okay, and Mischief of the Gnomes is also pretty good against Shiranui because the skill requires you to pitch a level 4 monster. So if you reduce that monster's level by 1, they cannot use the skill to send their level 4s to grab anything they want, which most of the time, if they don't have they don't have any other cards that play around this, if they don't have the a solitaire, this just ends their turn. And Forbidden Chalice is also pretty good against Shiranui deck that is going first. You can negate their Sun Saga similarly to Droplet, but it's a bit less good because you cannot reduce the attack because Sun Saga has a ton of attack itself, and also you cannot prevent them from chaining the trap by pitching the trap like you can with Droplet. But it is a lot cheaper, and most people probably don't have access to Droplet, so Chalice is a great free-to-play alternative. MST is good because MST counters the continuous trap. The continuous trap needs an out. If you don't have an out to the continuous trap, you cannot win the game because they can just keep using the effect over and over again and just take 0 damage, including effect damage. If your deck is playing effect damages like Ubel, for example, that prevents it as well. So you need some kind of back row removal, and MST is probably one of the best ones. Similarly with Cosmic Cyclone, quick play spells that remove back row is ideal because when they activate their trap, you can chain this effect in response, and that prevents them from resolving the effect. And even if you have something like a Nightmare Phoenix or Unicorn, they can still preemptively use the effect, which still allows them to get the effect to not take any damage for that turn, which really sucks. And one really funny tech that plays around Shiranui specifically is this card, Pod of Acquisitiveness. Blah, blah. This card deals with banished monsters. It can target 3 banished monsters, including your opponents, shuffle all 3 back to the deck, and then you draw a card for free. So if you play Shiranuis, you know that you will be banishing 3 monsters basically every single time because Spectral Sword banishes itself plus another level 4 card to make your level 6 synchro, and then your skill banishes 2 zombie synchros directly. So it's pretty easy for them to have 3 banished monsters. So once they have those 3, you can just activate this card in response to Skill Saga's effect, shuffle them back to the deck, so Skill Saga couldn't summon anything. And also you get a card for free. You get a free draw, which is pretty nice. And Kaiju's is also pretty good against Shiranui deck going first because you can just always tribute the link that they have and prevent them from even activating the effect in the first place because when you summon a Kaiju, it cannot be responded. For the extra deck, we have Abyss Dweller, which is just good against graveyard reliant decks in general. And also because of how the skill works, the skill puts Spectral Sword in the graveyard before the turn even starts. You can make this card, which is a Rhapsody in Berserk. This is a free to obtain card that you can make sure if you go first to banish the Spectral Sword from their graveyard before their turn even starts, so they can't just use the effect of Spectral Sword right from the get-go. And this can also equip to one of your other Xyz monsters if you're playing Xyz Focus deck, so this gives your monsters a bit of an attack boost as well. And just as a general advice on when to activate your disruptions, for example, if you have a number of Book of Moons and you're wondering when to disrupt their combo, basically just activate them whenever you can. Just don't let them have a tuner and a non-tuner on field at all times. Just as soon as you see them have a tuner on field, just flip that tuner face down. If you see a solitaire, you flip that solitaire face down. I would leave Squire alone because Squire doesn't really do a lot on its own. You are much better off flipping the tuner that it summons face down instead of the Squire itself. And if they summon Synchro using the effect of Spectral Sword, flipping that face down is also pretty good, but I would suggest to flip the Spectral Sword Shade or Solitaire first before you move on to the Synchros, because those two cards are more important for their combo, but if you have more disruptions, you can use them on the Synchros as well. Okay, so let's talk about some popular decks or meta decks or competitive decks that deal with Shiranui pretty well. We have a couple of them. Obviously, Tachyon is really good against anything because it's a really good deck. It's tier 0 for a reason. And Shiranui's does have an out to Tachyon if Shiranui's go first. They can just set up the Mischief of the Gnomes line to prevent Tachyon from playing. But if Tachyon goes first, they still have a pretty good chance of winning because of the Counter Trap and Felgrand. These two cards are really good. And as long as Shiranuis don't have access to the trap, which sometimes they don't because usually people only play a single copy of the trap, and if they don't open with combo itself, they need to search the combo pieces before they can search the trap. So basically not every time Shiranui players will open with the trap, so in that case, Tachyon is massively favored. And of course, Shiranui counters Shiranui, because if a Shiranui player goes first, they could make Beatrice and then send Gnome, and then Gnome itself counters Shiranui's pretty well. So whoever goes first basically has a massive advantage over the person who doesn't. And other decks like Constellas could make the Abyss Dweller pretty easily to prevent them from using graveyard effects, and also Constellas themselves have a lot of disruption if they go first, which can stop Shiranui from doing what they want. And same with other back row heavy decks like Live Twin. If they go first, they basically win the game because of the sheer amount of disruptions they can put out, which basically counters any other deck if they go first. Tenyis are pretty good out because of the non-destruction removals that they have. Vishuddha can bounce a card, and Abaxia can bounce 2 cards, which gets around the card target protection, the destruction protection of Sun Saga and Skill Saga. And finally, we have... Actually, no, there are 2 more decks. We have Evil Swarm. Evil Swarm is good against both Tachyon and Shiranui, given that they go first, because if they make Ophion, you basically just win automatically if you play against Tachyon or Shiranui, because these 2 decks heavily rely on special summoning level 5 or higher monsters, which, if you have Ophion on field, that just will not happen. And also, if your opponent has a Book of Moon, you can still always search the Infestation Pandemic to prevent them from affecting your own monster. But Evil Swarm has a bunch of different issues on its own. It has follow-up issues, consistency issues, and also it's not very good going second. So it's more of a anti-meta pick than a competitive meta pick. And finally, we have zombie control. So any deck that has access to Doom King Balodrock, for example, just normal zombie piles or Destiny heroes, which sometimes play the Zombie World engine as a supplement, can counter Shiranuis pretty well just because Shiranuis are all zombie monsters. So you don't even need Zombie World for Balodrock to activate its full potential, because you can just use its effect on any Shiranui monster. It doesn't even have to be on the field, because usually Zombie World decks only affect the monsters that are on the field or graveyard, because that's when the field spell turns them into zombies. But Balodrock can also negate banished zombie monsters for Shiranuis, because they are inherently zombie monsters. So you can always activate the effect of Balodrock to negate the effects of the Shiranui monsters wherever they are. They don't even have to be on the field or graveyard. They can be in the hand, they can be banished, they can be anywhere, and Balodrock will still be able to negate or use the second effect to banish anything. And speaking of the second effect, the second effect is also pretty good against Spectral Sword specifically, because it banishes it from the graveyard, and that is a pretty good counter to Shiranui itself. So yeah, that's basically it for the video. I hope that helps you a bit if you're playing competitively in these few days in the KC Cup Stage 2. I wouldn't recommend really playing too much in the second stage of the KC Cup because it's really boring. I mean, there is clearly a best deck in Tachyon, and Shiranui is a close second. And yeah, it's just a miserable time. But if you so decide to still play in this miserable period, do so, and I hope this video helped you at least a bit. So yeah, thanks for watching, and goodbye.